So today I just want to go over a few characteristics of the leg. I did a little bit of pre-drawing to expedite things a little today, but I'll kind of explain my pre-drawing before I work into it. And so there are a few kind of analogs between the arm and the leg. We saw last week, with the elbow. We were kind of running those dowels through the joint because those are hinge joints and they'll only move on one plane. Similarly here with the leg, we have the knee, also the hinge, and then the ankle is mostly hinge, but you do get some gliding in there with the ankle bones. And so I'll just kind of draw this simple machine here. So, no musculature on this one. But here's like a plank here. And our dowel. And then we'll run that down to our leg plank as well. So just kind of, keep that in mind. This moves this way, this way. The hip, that is ball and socket. So we do have, we can move in multiple directions there. But just keep this in mind. Plank here, or dowel here, dowel here. And then I'm gonna talk a little bit about musculature. But as you saw in that first drawing in the handout, basically, if I'm drawing this from the back, and this kind of happens like throughout the body. But we have like a very kind of specific overlap here, with tendons reaching across the joint. That creates some functionality in the joint. The tendons reach across and then they pull, and that's how our limbs work. And so again, here's our dowel. So we're seeing that as a sort of like a dovetail joint. If any of you know woodworking, something like that. So that moves up in there, and then this is our hole for the dowel. All right, good so far. So what I've done, I don't know how well you can see this. This is in gray Prismacolor. But basically, we have greater. So I've just drawn a few rectangles. So this is my pelvis up here, and actually I drew that pretty high. That should probably be there. So we have pubic symphysis, and also greater trochanter here. And so what's happening with the bones there is we have the hip joint here, and then the femur. The femur kind of comes down at an angle, something like this. Then we have patella here, and then the tibia. Tibia and fibula here. And I'm just going to kind of add muscles on top of that. So here's our big toe, and here's the foot. And so what's happening, and I'll just draw this from the front first, is we have those spines on the pelvis here. And this is that 3-finger gap I was talking about. And basically from our view, on the right side of that, so which would actually be anatomical left side, we have tensor fascia lata here. Which reaches maybe not that far down, but almost past that greater trochanter. And then on the inside of that, we have sartorius, which is kind of like this ribbon-like muscle that basically crosses over the thigh like this and wraps in down below the knee. Good, yeah. In here we have the sit bones. And so the forms here, and I'll draw this here. But these are the adductors. Yeah, the adductor group here. And then if we jump to the outside, tensor fascia lata ties into the iliotibial tract, which is also called the IT band. And these kind of form, I'll do that in a different color. These kind of form our barriers for the quadriceps. And so with our quadriceps, we have our kind of lowest head is on the inside here. Something like that. So that's our vastus medialis. Medialis just implies that it's on the inside. Rectus femoris goes up a little higher with the belly somewhere around here. And then vastus lateralis also reaches towards the knee, but doesn't hit quite as low as vastus medialis. So we can kind of, and I'll draw these in dimension in a moment. And then from the front, we can see, and I'll draw these from another angle again in a moment, but gastrocnemius and soleus is deep to gastrocnemius. I can draw that here. But that's we're seeing kind of a back form from the front there. And then we do have, you have kind of your bony kind of shin area here, and then there are some anterior muscles here on the leg, and those will reach down into the foot. So that's front, this is side. And with the ankle bones, you have the medial and lateral, were called the malleolus. Malleolus here and malleolus here. I think plurals like malleoli, maybe. But you'll notice, if we draw like an axis through those two forms, they kind of do this, like at an angle like that. One thing to point out about our dowel is we're going to level that dowel out, and it's going to hit like this. Oh, and I forgot the rest of the hip. Here, and oh, you'll see it more clearly here. But one of our main side features on the pelvis is gluteus medius, which kind of fans out, and you'll kind of see that here below that kind of line for the crest on the pelvis here. All right, good so far. So this is our side. This is going to be our front. And so I'm just going to throw some kind of rhythms in here just so I can kind of figure out where things sit. There we go. Okay, so pubic symphysis from the side is going to be here. Level with that is our greater trochanter. I'm just going to leave that as like a white square, and then kind of build around that. Crest of the pelvis is here, and then we have our, I don't know how far this is in front. That's pretty level. So we'll say like here. And so our tensor fascia lata is going to be in red. So tensor fascia, again, sits here. And it's not, I'm drawing it pretty large. It does have this sort of like teardrop shape. But it's not, unless someone specifically like builds that muscle, it's not going to be like huge or anything. And then that's going to tie into the IT band here, which crosses that joint. Again, gluteus medius, it's almost like this, like, you can kind of think of it almost like a seashell. And what's happening here, if we kind of lit this, there's a little bit of a depression that comes up here, kind of into gluteus maximus. Gluteus maximus, we'll see it in dimension here, but it comes behind gluteus medius, and it comes around the sacrum and attaches in a big way to the pelvis, and then wraps around in front and ties in at the IT band as well. Something like that. Again, I'm just making one big group. Quadriceps, we're on the outside, so maybe that'll be a little bit higher. And then we have the hamstrings back here. Which again, I'm just going to kind of call out this overlap with the mechanical pencil. But again, we cross the joint, and then the leg comes out from behind there. Patella is going to sit here. Here's our malleolus here. And then we have gastrocnemius. Let me do that in red again. Gastrocnemius here. And then soleus under that. And then again, that anterior muscle here. And we'll talk feet. We'll talk feet next week. But I'm just going to kind of summarize that down into, like, you know, ankle bone here, top of the foot, toes, you know, something like that. So to project that into 3 dimensions, we have pubic symphysis here. And then I'm going to basically travel around that box here, greater trochanter, and again, I'm going to leave that as like a white square there, kind of sitting. And I'm just trying to make my colors consistent. Tensor fascia here. So again, coming off those spines on the pelvis, and then wrapping in here, that kind of teardrop shape. Our IT band here. Gluteus medius, I'm going to kind of wrap the form on that here. And that again attaches up around that crest on the pelvis. Something like that. And then gluteus maximus, again ties in the IT band here. And we'll get this sort of like, you'll have like, and I shouldn't do that in orange because that's going to look too much like it. Here, I'll just draw gluteus maximus in here. So it kind of sits like this. But you'll notice we have this sort of like bump here. So going back up into the torso, you know, we would have external oblique here. And then here, you know, that might flatten out a little bit. And then gluteus medius. And that's, you know, these things change as you go around the figure, but for the most part, that's kind of what can happen there. And then we have, again, sartorius here, kind of wrapping around and disappearing onto that inside of that knee here. And then our quads here. So I'm just going to make this kind of like triple. It's like this ugly W or something. But there are. So basically what's happening here is, you know, to think back to our, you know, our idea of these rectangular prisms. You know, if we have like front, side. Basically what's happening with the quadriceps is here we have a corner form. This is a front form. And then this vastus medialis is another corner form. So it kind of, we're kind of sitting on the corners like that almost. Does that make sense? And so that kind of that's kind of a point where we have this idea of the geometry, you know, this kind of strange rectilinear thing we're applying to the figure. But that also kind of shows us adding those corner forms. That kind of softens that a little bit, right? Makes it a little less geometric. And then this side note, this is kind of a depression here. So these muscles kind of dive in there. They're up here too. Alright, so we'll have, basically tendon here, ties into the patella, which travels down and basically bridges that gap. You have like that kneeling point on the fibula. Here, and then this is where that dowel is going to hit. And so I actually didn't really draw vastus medialis going down low enough. That basically like sits, at the bottom of the thigh at the knee. And then maybe this comes down a little more. And then I'll throw a little bit of hamstring in here. And then again, if we kind of, gastrocnemius here, soleus here, and then those anterior muscles here. And then we'll kind of, we'll talk about feet next week. But, obviously you will be drawing some feet today. So I do kind of go for like the, looking for like geometry in there. More this kind of like triangular prism type shape. And you can kind of lead with the front of the foot here. And for today, you can just kind of look to throw a big toe on there to kind of imply what part of the foot we're looking at. And then we'll just jump to this back 3/4 view, and then we'll hop to it. So again, I'm starting on the greater trochanter here. And I'm going to build out drawing the gluteus medius first. So here's like the front of the pelvis. And that's going to fan out, maybe somewhere like that. And like I said, there is, depending on the build of the person, usually like a depression here, kind of surrounding that greater trochanter. Here, with the attachment of the gluteus maximus, it attaches along here on the sacrum. Here, it kind of overlaps with gluteus medius, ties in here, and then we kind of have like this portion that ties into the IT band, and then a larger portion here. And so when I draw this, and I think the kind of muscle strands do kind of run this way, but I'll kind of, when I'm illustrating the muscles, you can kind of show that form, by kind of fanning those out and bringing them back. We would see, maybe a little bit of that tensor fascia here. And then that IT band running down here, crossing that joint. And then maybe Yeah, maybe a little bit of quadriceps poking out here. See, and I had this in blue before, yeah. And then, you know, hamstrings here. You know, we can kind of show that as like almost like you know, if we like cut a piece of like an egg off, pull that out. That's the sort of form I'm trying to kind of describe here. It's kind of like combined like forms for the muscle. And then again, as I said, you know, thinking back here, we have these tendons reaching across, you know, like that. And you'll see this sometimes. You'll see this almost like this kind of like funky like H thing at the back of the knee, which that's like kind of these tendons, and then you know, you'll see the leg coming down like that. Gastrocnemius here. And soleus underneath. And then one thing I didn't really talk about, because we haven't seen it so prominently yet, but you know, Achilles tendon here. And then here's that malleolus here. So I can kind of put a separation there too. And then one thing, I'm just going to kind of leave this all grayed out. Gluteus maximus kind of wraps around here. Greater trochanter here. Gluteus medius. And then I'm just going to kind of throw a form in at the thigh, just so I can show you kind of on the inside with the adductors. You again have another one of those kind of forms in here. And then, you know, maybe I'll throw this one on too. And so that overlap's pretty important. You know, there's tendons reaching across, and then that lower leg kind of coming out from there. One last thing with the ankle, kind of similar to what I drew here. You know, we can also, and I will separate, and we'll talk more about this next week. You know, we can do something like this. So this is like a nice little like box form for our ankle. And then with the foot, you know, we can kind of, and then you can kind of connect those two. So if we sink that down on there, those forms are a lot more subtle than that. And I'll just drive that out of there. Does that make sense? Those are the feet extra. Realized I was off screen.